All right. We've had one 6 week block of training with youth ages 10 to 13 at our gym, and we've got a high school group starting right after the March break. So I wanted to go through and highlight how we train these two groups and get you interested in either for yourself or for your kids to get into one of these groups. So I've been working since 2006 or 7 with athletes. That's where my first paying job was in in the in the fitness world, and I started with the we had a Norseman youth camp ages 10 to 13, and then was with the Trojan Power group at West Ferris and got to work with all sorts of athletes with that. But these options didn't really work in my old 600 square foot gym. With the ages 10 to 13, what we found was that, the training was good, but it was boring for the kids because they'd have to work out with adults age 40 to 60, and there just weren't enough uh, kids interested in what we had. So the kids would leave after a month or two, and I basically just started turning these younger kids away after a while. So the most effective training, especially for the younger kids, is to train in a group with their friends, and and then with the high school group, it can go kind of either way. If they're intrinsically motivated, they can do really well in a small group setting, and the coaching's a little bit higher quality because there's only four in a room. And so we did have some athletes that got really good results in that age group. But what we found is that we started training my high school running group, bringing them into the gym a couple times a week, training with themselves against each other. They found that one kid would lift the weight and then another kid would think, well, I can do that. And then it would push them and motivate them to work harder. And we got better results faster with that. So you've probably seen some kind of a youth long-term athlete development model. This one is from the Athletics Canada system. So kind of training that we're doing for 10 to 13 year olds. It's kind of just learning to train, learning these basic movements like how to squat, how to lunge, and trying to add in a lot of fun and games with this group. The high school group, we can go a little bit harder in the training to train stage and even training to compete and get them a little bit working a little bit harder, a little bit more loading and but with less games than that. And going back, uh, one of the other important reasons with this is we want to teach these kids to be active for life, and so learning early how to do these movements carries on for a lifetime of health and fitness. And what I found is that for myself, I started weight training when I was 12, and I got results fast in terms of physique and gain in strength and ability. And I saw my confidence went through the roof. I wasn't really good at sports at these ages. And uh, to be able to see these gains and then have my friends be impressed with, say, the number of push-ups I can do. And it just carried on to gave me so much confidence. And my daughter is in the age 10 to 13 group, and she's loving it. All the kids are loving it. Most of our kids uh, came back from the first group now into the second group, and that's what we wanted for these younger kids was to uh, ha- help them to enjoy a lifetime of fitness. Now there we had this other model that's been around for a few decades from Isfan Ballet on with windows of opportunity. So when could we start, or when was the most sensitive time where we could train certain qualities? And there wasn't really a lot of research to support this kind of stuff. So a new model has come out in the last maybe 10 years by Rodri Lloyd and John Oliver. And basically, it's telling us that we need to train every quality at each age category. Just it's going to look different as we progress. So, as I mentioned, with the 10 to 13-year-olds, focusing doing a lot of games, obstacle courses, stuff like that, and a lot of technique work on the basic exercises, not focusing so much on loading in the early stages. So a few objectives that we had, and I kind of touched on them. Wanted to be able to train my daughter, have a spot for her to train, and wanted to build confidence in these kids, have the knowledge of how to do these exercises safely for life. But then we also had the objective of helping improve athletic performance, reducing the risk of injury, and improved health. Research showing that we can dramatically reduce the risk of an acute injury like an ACL injury or patellar uh, an ACL injury or MCL or maybe ulnar collateral ligament, which for baseball, Tommy John surgery, and then or even a hamstring strain, and then also chronic injuries like patellar tendonitis and shin splints and stuff like that. Strength training is beneficial for all of those injuries. So, strength training for the growing body, we've got three questions that I want to talk about. So, when I started coaching with strength training uh, nearly 20 years ago, I wanted to make sure that it was safe for the kids that I was uh, working with, and then now more so that I'm a parent and getting my kid into this. So a long time ago, there was this idea that came out that if kids lifted weights, it could damage their growth plates and then they would stunt their growth. And where this came from was the study actually wasn't on kids lifting weights. It was on Japanese child laborers, and they found out that these kids were shorter than everybody else. And then they made the assumption, well, it was because they had to lift heavy loads. And what's more likely is that they were just undernourished, and then they just didn't grow because they weren't being fed properly. Now, this can a growth plate be injured in a child and stunt their growth? Yes, it commonly happens in falls and other types of accidents. So if we're in an organized setting with qualified coach, the risk of that injury, actually, I haven't ever heard of a kid being injured in a weight room to a growth plate, that is. So what kind of injuries do kids typically get? It's typically to the hands and feet, so they're dropping weights on their toes and stuff like that. So again, with the younger group, we're less focusing on weight and more so uh, learning the techniques. So that again limits the risk of that type of injury. What we found is in the research that over, I think the research goes back 60 years now, lots of different studies. Training for strength is both safe and effective for ages as young as 6 years old. Now, again, through the different age categories, we're going to train in a different manner. Like in a 6 to 9 year old, a group that we don't train, but I would want them focused almost entirely on games to develop that strength and conditioning. So this is how we're applying strength and conditioning for the 10 to 13-year-old. So we focus on technique first, Then we focus on building up their volume with that technique. So if they did 3 sets of 5 on the first day, week 2, we're going to do 3 sets of 6 and then 3 sets of 7, progressing up to 3 sets of 10. And then once they get up to 3 sets of 10, we can drop them back to 3 sets of 5 and give them a little bit more weight. That's the least important variable, though. And what we found is that the kids that we've been working with can't do simple movements like push-ups and lunges. So we have to take them back to a regressed variation of each of those. We're doing push-up on an incline. We're using band-assisted split squat to help them with their lunge. Using a plate squat, which is a way of helping them stay more upright in their squat, and using heel elevation for that as well. And take them through a large variety of movements. We want them to skip and shuffle and gallop and jump and squat and push and pull and throwing medicine balls against the wall. Very fun for these kids. But we don't want to talk the whole time. So we focus on demonstrations, having good demonstrations, and adding constraints. So if a kid has their knees caving in, we can put a mini band around their knees and say, I want you to stretch this band while you're squatting, and that helps get them in the right position. We can also block their knee so that their knee is staying upright in a lunge variation. And lots of variations. We want to help them to stay tall when they run. We can have them reach a medicine ball overhead, and that helps them to stay tall. And then we also want to limit boredom in this group. So we have games, different competitions like relay races, time things, have obstacle courses. We put all the strength stuff in the circuits, so you're not focusing on one exercise. And then we're also limiting isometrics. So holds like in a plank, a 60-second plank is very boring for a young kid. Instead, a bear crawl is a great way to develop the core for a kid this age. For the high school group, I would have told you when I was starting that if you wanted to get a kid stronger, you're going to lift weights. If you want them to jump higher, lift weights, sprint faster, lift weights. And that's because strength has a base for so many different activities and abilities. But now I'm thinking a little bit more holistically, maybe if that's the right word. We want to get stronger. Of course, we're going to lift weights, but if we want to jump higher, we want to focus on jumping. And if we want to sprint faster, we want to sprint. So we combine all these exercises. High school strength conditioning program, you need to lift weights, we need to jump, and we need to sprint. So what does a session look like? We get a progressive warm-up to focus on improving mobility and stability around our major joints. We want to practice key movements like squatting and lunging with minimal load. And then we go through and we work on speed, power, and agility. We want to sprint with say body weight only, but also with resistance, like with a sled. Research by J.B. Morin on weighted sled sprints, how they improve acceleration. That's like your first step, faster first step. And we want to jump, pop, bound for height, distance, focus on minimal ground contact time, every jump in every single direction, loaded and unloaded. And then for strength and muscle building and muscle maintenance, we want to do the major exercises like the hinge, squat, lunge, upper body push and pull, carrying different weights. And we want to do all different rep ranges and speeds with these movements. So common question we get, is this sport specific training? Well, technically, no. At the high school level, the kids just don't have advanced levels of strength. So sports specific training, at least with weight room type exercises, aren't going to be that beneficial. So I have the Bondarchuk classification of exercise here. So competitive exercise is the actual movement that you would do on the court or field or in the pool or on the track or something like that. And then we do specific development exercises. So if your sport involves running, you can do a loaded uh, like a weighted sled sprint would be an exercise to help that would be similar to your sport. If your sport is golf or tennis or baseball or hockey where you're rotating to do the movement, a medicine ball throw is going to be a specific development exercise. But that doesn't mean that these exercises aren't beneficial for all sports. So some of these might fit into a general, for a track sprinter, medicine ball throw could be a general preparatory exercise. And but for a tennis player, it's going to be more specific. And then and the typical strength movements in the gym are going to fit more in a special prep or in the general preparatory exercises, and then maybe plyometrics are going to fit into more of a specific preparatory exercise. So even though an exercise isn't very specific, it doesn't mean it's really any less beneficial. They can still work for injury prevention. I think of Martin Bingisser. He was talking about how his coach Anatoly Bondarchuk found that the squat wasn't very specific for the elite level uh, discus thrower, but they still squatted 5 times a week. It's just a general exercise, and you need all these types of exercise together. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, you can send me a DM on any of my social media accounts, or you can just go into our website at Pratt for Fitness, and you go and do this regular sign up on there as if you were to sign up for a small group training. So the link usually says sign up for a free strategy session, and would get you situated into the right group based on the phone call when you find out a little bit more about you. All right. Looking forward to having you join, and send any questions my way. Thank you.